My sister had been missing for 15 days. When I finally went to her house, the place was ransacked. I was about to call the police when I heard a noise coming from the closet. My heart froze. What I discovered inside changed everything. The world stopped for me the moment I heard it. Not a scream, not a gunshot, but a single, sickening word from my neighbor, smell. That word, spoken with Mrs. Lell's trembling voice, hit me harder than any bullet, and deep down, I knew my sister Lana wasn't just missing, she was in grave danger. 15 days. That's how long Lana had been silent. No calls, no texts, no whisper of her from our little town back in Ashburn. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Bad reception, her legendary stubbornness. Lana always had that wild, independent streak, the kind that made you beam with pride 1 minute and tear your hair out the next. But by day 10, the excuses had dried up, leaving a cold, hard certainty in their place. Something was horribly wrong. I was still on active duty, thousands of miles away, when Mrs. Lell called. The woman who once chased a bear off her porch with a broomstick sounded utterly terrified. "Annie," she'd stammered, "I haven't seen your sister in over a week." Her mail's piling up, the car's still in the driveway, and there's this smell. Just like that, my world tilted. Within hours, my emergency leave was approved. My commanding officer didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer any. Soldiers don't need reasons to go home when family is involved. I threw my duffel in the Jeep, grabbed a gas station coffee that tasted like regret, and started the 6-hour drive north. Ashburn. Not much to look at. A few blocks of old houses, one gas station, a diner stuck in the 80s, and then just miles of empty desert. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business, which made Lana's sudden silence all the more deafening. When I finally pulled onto her street, everything looked normal. But the air, it felt heavy, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. And then I saw it. Her front door cracked open. My training kicked in before my emotions did. Ignition off. Slow steps out of the car, eyes scanning. The porch light flickered. A stack of unopened mail lay by the mat. The flower beds Lana used to fuss over were now just dirt and weeds. Despair started to set in. Inside, the air was a physical blow, stale, warm, thick. It screamed that something had gone terribly, irrevocably wrong. The living room was a war zone. Couch overturned, cushions slashed, papers scattered everywhere. A photo frame lay face down by the window, glass shattered. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was Lana and her son, Connor, from last Christmas. He was 7. The house was eerily silent, save for a faint ticking from the old wall clock she'd kept since college. "Lana," I called out, my voice too loud in the stillness. Nothing. "Connor." I tried again, a desperate plea. Still nothing. I moved through the house like I was clearing an enemy compound, methodical, controlled, my heart a drum solo in my throat. The kitchen was even worse. Cabinet doors ajar, the fridge door half open, a plate smashed in the sink. A chair lay splintered on its side. And there, on the tile near the counter, a dark stain. Not enough to send me spiraling into full-blown panic, but enough to make my mind race with sickening possibilities. Then, from the hallway, I heard it. Faint. Uneven. Breathing. I froze, my hand instinctively going for the sidearm I'd left locked in the car. Every nerve screamed. I crept closer, the sound leading me to Lana's bedroom. The door was half open. The room beyond looked like a tornado had ripped through it. Sheets torn, lamp broken, dresser drawers dumped on the floor. And then, a soft whimper. It was coming from the closet. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice calm steady. "It's Anne. I'm not going to hurt you." The only answer was a shaky inhale, then silence. I took a deep breath, opened the closet door, and, for a second, saw nothing but shadows. Then my eyes adjusted, and there he was, a small figure, Connor, crouched in the corner behind a pile of clothes. He was pale, filthy, trembling. His eyes darted toward me, wide and unfocused, like a cornered animal. I knelt, hands visible, approaching him the way you'd approach someone in shock. "Connor," I whispered. "It's me, Aunt Anne. You're okay now." He didn't move. For a terrifying second, I thought he didn't even recognize me. Then he blinked, and a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp escaped him. When my fingers brushed his arm, he flinched hard. His skin was ice cold. "Hey," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you." He shook his head, then choked out the words that shattered my world. "Mom. Mom told me to hide." His voice broke. That single sentence felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I pulled him out gently, wrapping my jacket around him. He was so light, it scared me. How long had he been in there? Days? He clutched his old stuffed bear, the same one Lana had bought him at the county fair 2 years ago. "Where's your mom?" I asked, my voice raw. He didn't answer. He just buried his face against me and whispered, "Don't let him come back." That was all I needed to hear. This wasn't some random break-in. This was targeted. I carried him out to the Jeep and drove straight to the nearest hospital. At the ER, as doctors rushed Connor inside, I finally exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. When a nurse asked what happened, I told her the only truth I knew. I don't know yet. Sitting under those buzzing fluorescent lights, I replayed everything. The broken furniture, the stains, the silence. And that smell Mrs. Lull had mentioned. It wasn't death. It was something else. Chemical. Maybe cleaning products. Maybe something used to cover something up. Finally, a doctor came out. "He's stable," she said. "Dehydrated, hungry, but no major injuries. He's been through serious psychological trauma, though." "You said he was alone for days?" I asked. 3, maybe 4, I replied, my voice hoarse. "He didn't say much." She nodded grimly. "We'll keep him overnight, but you should call the police." I already had. Detective Merritt, a man with the seasoned calm of a veteran officer, arrived with a younger partner. His eyes were steady, his voice measured. He listened without interruption as I recounted everything, from Mrs. Lull's call to finding Connor. "You're military?" he asked when I finished. "Army," I said. "Then you already know the drill. Don't jump ahead of us. We'll find out what happened." I wanted to believe him, but I'd seen too much to trust easy reassurances. Outside, the desert night air felt colder than it had any right to be. I looked back through the hospital window at Connor, sleeping, his small hand still clutching that bear. Something hardened inside me. I didn't know what had happened to Lana yet, but I knew this. I wasn't going back to base until I found out. And I wasn't letting anyone get away with it. The next morning, the sun barely penetrated the hospital room blinds. Connor was awake, staring at the ceiling miles away. He didn't flinch when I walked in, just followed me with his eyes. The nurse said he hadn't spoken since I left. I pulled a chair next to his bed. "Hey, champ," I said softly. "You did good last night. You're safe now." He didn't reply, but his fingers fidgeted with the blanket. He looked smaller, like the fear had shrunk him. Before I could ask anything, Detective Merritt walked in, looking as sleep-deprived as I felt. "Morning, Lieutenant," he nodded. "We've got a team at your sister's house. You might want to come with us when you can." "I'm coming," I said. He looked at Connor. "The kid's staying here. Child Services will check on him until family arrangements are made." "I'm family," I snapped. He raised an eyebrow, probably expecting that. "Then you'll be signing custody paperwork later. For now, let the doctors handle him. You and I have a scene to visit." I leaned close to Connor. "I'll be back soon, okay? You're safe here." He turned his head slightly, eyes glassy, voice barely a whisper. "Don't go to the house." It stopped me cold. "Why not?" I asked. He just shook his head and hid under the blanket. "He'll come back." I didn't push him, just tucked the blanket around him and left. But his words clung to my brain like static. The drive back to the house was quiet. Merritt kept his eyes on the road. "Your sister was a single mom?" "Yeah," I said. "Divorced. Dad's not in the picture." "Anyone else recently?" "Boyfriend, business partner." I shook my head. "Not that I know of. We weren't in touch much lately." He glanced over. "Military distance." I let out a humorless laugh. "You could say that." When we pulled up, the street looked surreal. Police tape, squad cars, a forensics van. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, pretending not to stare. The dry morning air filled my lungs. The chemical smell from last night was gone, or maybe I was too focused to notice it now. Inside, the house looked even worse in daylight. Every detail screamed chaos. Merritt walked me through the scene. Signs of a struggle in the living room. Broken glass, overturned furniture. Partial prints on the doorknob. "The counter looks like at least 2 sets." He nodded. "One likely your sister's. The others are unidentified." In the kitchen, a tech crouched, swabbing the floor. "Possible blood trace," she said. Merritt scribbled it down. "You think it's a robbery?" I asked. He shook his head. "No forced entry. Whoever did this, they were either let in or had a key." That hit me like a punch to the gut. Lana had let them in. I stared at the broken chair. Lana used to joke she could handle anything, but this didn't look like she'd had a chance. A young officer walked up, holding a small evidence bag. "Detective, found this behind the couch." Inside was a torn envelope with about $50. Merritt frowned. "But I saw something else, a faint, smeared note on the back." "That's my sister's handwriting," I said, pointing. The ink was faded, but 2 words were clear. "Don't trust." The rest was gone. Merritt looked up. "Don't trust who?" "If I knew that," I said, "we wouldn't be standing here." He pocketed the bag and sent an officer to check Lana's bank statements. While they worked, I walked down the hall to Lana's bedroom. The closet door was still open, the faint outline of where Connor had huddled visible on the carpet. The stuffed bear was gone. The hospital must have let him keep it. I crouched and noticed something shiny behind a stack of boxes. A small silver necklace, a compass charm. My gift to Lana when I first deployed. "So you'll find your way back," she'd said. I handed it to Merritt. You and your sister close growing up? He asked. Close enough to fight about everything, I said. But yeah, I guess I didn't do much to deserve that lately. He didn't respond. He didn't have to. By the time we left, it was close to noon. Merritt gave me his card. We'll run prints, check surveillance, talk to neighbors. You should get some rest. Rest isn't going to help, I said. Then at least eat something. Soldiers forget that's important, too. Back at the hospital, Connor was coloring. He looked up, but didn't smile. Did you go? He asked. Yeah. His lip trembled. Was she there? I hesitated. No one. Not yet. He gripped his crayon tighter. The man said she'd be okay. What man? He didn't look up. The man who came that night. Mom said to hide, and then they shouted. He was mad. He broke things. My pulse quickened. Did you see him? He nodded slowly. He wore a black jacket. He smelled like gas. Gasoline. I pressed. Yeah. He sniffled. He took Mom's phone. Then it got quiet. I took a deep breath. Do you remember what he looked like? Anything at all. Connor bit his lip. He had a scar here. He pointed to his chin. And he said something about money. He said she owed him. That was enough. Merritt would want every word. I called him from the hallway. We'll run it through our records, he said. Sounds like a debt collector or loan shark. The next day, sitting in the precinct, coffee lukewarm, watching Merritt pin photos of Lana's house onto a board, the pieces slowly started to fit. Bank records came back, he said. Your sister withdrew nearly $6,000 2 weeks ago. Cash. No trace after that. She didn't keep that kind of money around, I said. She ran a bookkeeping service, not exactly rolls of cash work. Which means she was paying someone. Or trying to. He handed me a grainy photo, a black SUV parked near Lana's street the night before she went missing, caught by a neighbor's security camera. A white Falcon decal on the back window. Ever seen that? He asked. I shook my head. But Connor mentioned a man with a scar on his chin. Smelled like gas. Merritt grunted. We'll run the vehicle, cross-check loan shark activity. I leaned forward. Loan shark? You think my sister was mixed up in that? He hesitated. We found a burner phone in her nightstand. Texts between her and someone named Reed. No last name, just a bunch of messages asking for more time to fix it. The word fix hit me hard. Lana always used it when she was trying to keep a secret. He slid the printouts across the table. The last few texts were frantic. Lana, please. I just need a few days. And then from Reed, you had your chance. You know how this works. Lana, don't come here. My son's home. Reed, that's your problem. We've traced that number, Merritt said. Prepaid SIM, gas station off Highway 50. I rubbed my temples. So she was in trouble and no one knew. He gave me a look that stung. You were overseas. Training command in Fort Lewis. She didn't tell me anything, I said quietly. Maybe she didn't want me to worry. Merritt nodded. Families hiding their messes until they exploded. A young officer poked his head in. Detective, you'll want to see this. We followed him to the evidence room. A tech zoomed in on a screen. Partial match from the kitchen counter. Reed Collins. Local contractor, known associate of a small-time loan operation. Multiple priors for extortion. Aggravated assault. Merritt looked at me. Sound familiar? No, I said, but I'd like to meet him. Not yet, he said firmly. We'll find him. You stay out of it. I didn't argue, but he knew I wasn't promising anything. By noon, I was back at Lana's house. The police tape still fluttered. The air inside felt empty. I started picking up the mess, not to clean, but to understand. On the table, her planner was open to the week she disappeared. Her neat handwriting listed ordinary things. Pick up Connor's prescription. Call water company. And then meet RC. 6 p.m. confirm payment. There it was. RC. I pulled out my phone. A quick search. Read Collins Ashburn NV. First hit. Collins Home Improvement. A photo showed a man who looked like he could win an argument with a bulldozer. His smile didn't reach his eyes. And yes, a faint scar on his chin. 2 years ago, he'd been sued for unpaid work. The case was dismissed after a private settlement. Typical. When I closed Lana's planner, an envelope fell out from the back cover. Sealed with tape, labeled, only in case something happens. My throat went dry. I peeled it open. Inside, a shorthand note, dated a week before she vanished. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't fix it. I tried to protect Connor. Please don't judge me for what I did. Reed said he'd hurt us if I didn't pay. He wants everything. The store, money, the house. I can't let that happen. Take care of Connor. I love you. Lana. Her handwriting trembled in places, like she'd been writing fast, terrified. I read it twice, my fingers shaking. I wasn't sure if I was angrier at her for keeping it secret or at myself for not seeing it sooner. I called Merritt immediately and read him the note. That confirms it, he said. Reed Collins isn't just a suspect. He's the key. We're getting a warrant for his business records and home address. I hung up and looked around the house. Every detail suddenly made sense. The broken furniture, the scattered papers, the missing phone. It wasn't random. It was desperation. She'd fought back. I ran my hand along her dresser and felt something taped underneath a drawer. A small USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop. Only one folder. Tax Files 2024. But inside were scanned documents that didn't belong to her business. Fake invoices, wire transfers, large cash deposits. All tied to Collins' home improvement. My chest tightened. Lana hadn't just been a victim. She'd been trying to expose him. I printed copies of everything and drove straight to the station. Merritt's expression was unreadable. She was documenting him, I said, handing him the folder. Money laundering, fake clients, offshore payments. Everything. A whole operation. He flipped through the pages, eyes narrowing. Jesus. She was sitting on a financial bomb. Yeah, I said. And he found out. Merritt nodded grimly. We'll bring in Collins by tonight. He's not getting far. But even as he said it, I could tell he wasn't sure. Guys like Collins didn't just disappear. They prepared. When I walked out, the sky was turning orange over the desert. I caught my reflection in the glass doors, tired, tense, but determined. I wasn't thinking about regulations or what I was allowed to do. I was thinking about my sister, writing that letter with shaking hands, probably believing no one would come for her. That wasn't going to happen again. If Collins thought he could scare my family into silence, he'd underestimated the wrong damn sister. By the time the sun slipped behind the ridge, I was parked outside Collins' home improvement. It was a joke of a business, a rusted sign, a gravel lot, a prefab office that looked abandoned. A single pickup sat out front, dust coating the windshield, a half-empty coffee cup still in the holder. Merritt had told me to wait for backup. Waiting had never been my strength. The door was locked. I peered through a grimy window, a mess of papers, a monitor still glowing. Someone had left in a hurry. The tire tracks in the gravel told the story. 2 sets, one from the pickup, one newer, larger, leading towards the old industrial park on the edge of town. Merritt's voice echoed in my head. Let us handle it. I ignored him. I followed the trail to a line of storage units by the freight yard. No lights, no cameras, just the hum of the wind. I scanned each door until I found one with a fresh scrape near the latch. Someone had forced it open recently. I crouched, peered inside, and caught the faint scent of gasoline again. Inside were paint cans, tools, and, shoved in the corner, a safe, its door ajar. I turned on my phone flashlight. Inside, a neat pile of cash, maybe 10 grand, and a notebook labeled Ledger. I flipped it open. Page after page listed names, dates, dollar amounts. It wasn't home repairs. It was extortion. Loans with interest rates that would make a mobster blush. One name jumped off the page, L. Pierce, followed by 12K outstanding. Due immediately. My sister. Her name was circled in red, and under it a rushed scrawl. Too risky. Problem. A noise behind me. Gravel crunching. I killed the light and pressed myself against the cold metal wall. The storage door creaked open. 2 figures stepped in, one tall, heavy-set, the other smaller, twitchier. You sure he left it here? The smaller one whispered. Yeah, said he'd drop the files and burn the place tomorrow. We grabbed the ledger tonight. It's done. I stayed still, slow breathing, heart steady. They moved toward the safe. The taller one cursed when he saw it open. Shit. Someone's been here. That was my cue. I slipped out the side door, keeping low, but my boot hit a loose wrench. Clink. Both flashlights swung toward me. Hey, who's there? I didn't stick around. I ran. Their footsteps pounded behind me. Stop. You don't want to make this worse. Which was exactly what people said right before making it worse. I cut between the storage rows, ducked behind a shipping container, forcing my breathing to slow. The footsteps stopped. Forget it. Grab the book. We'll deal with her later. Her. They knew who I was. By the time I reached my car, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, righteous fury. I called Merritt. Detective, I found something. My voice was tight. A ledger. Storage unit near the freight yard. Collins's operation. 2 men showed up while I was there. You went alone? His voice sharpened. I'm not great with patience. He sighed. You could have been killed. Stay put. We'll send a unit. I'm already gone, I said, and hung up. At home, I spread the photos across the kitchen table, the ledger pages, the cash, the list of names. It was bigger than I thought. This wasn't just about one loan. This was a full-blown laundering ring. Collins was fronting construction jobs to funnel dirty money, and Lana had stumbled right into it. She'd been their accountant, probably unknowingly at first, until she realized what they were doing. The tax files on her drive weren't hers. They were his. I glass of water and realized my hands were still trembling. The part of me trained to assess threat scenarios kicked in. Motive, pattern, resources. Collins had money and muscle. He wasn't working alone. And if two of his guys already knew who I was, my clock was ticking. The knock at my door that night made me freeze. Miss Pierce. Detective Merritt. I cracked the door open an inch. He looked worn, his tie loose, but his eyes were sharper than ever. You left out a few details in your call, he said dryly. My team found a half-open crime scene with fresh footprints. Because waiting gets people killed, I said. He exhaled slowly. You're lucky those men didn't see your face. We pulled camera footage. They're Collins's guys. Jack Vargo and Luis Carver. Muscle for hire. Collins used them before. So, what's next? I asked. Next, Merritt said, we issue a warrant for Collins's arrest. If your sister's alive, he's our best shot at finding her. He hesitated, then added, you need to stay out of this. You're too close. I laughed, a bitter sound. Detective, she was my sister. Too close stopped mattering the moment I found her kid hiding in a closet. He studied me for a second, then nodded. Then do me one favor if you find something. Before we do, you call me first. No cowboy moves. Can't promise that, I said. He half smiled. Didn't think you would. After he left, I sat at the table. The ledger stared back at me. I picked up Lana's photo, now taped back together. There was still one thing missing, proof that Collins had gone after her personally. The ledger showed money. The text showed threats. But I needed a connection, a location, a date. Something that tied him directly to that night. I opened Lana's laptop again. Hidden in her email drafts was an unsent message, timestamped 11:42 p.m. the night she disappeared, to Detective M at Ashburn PD, subject, urgent. Collins records. Message, Detective. I have everything. He found out I copied the files. If something happens to me, check the cabin by Mill Creek. That's where they meet. Please hurry. The cursor blinked at the end, frozen mid-word. She'd been interrupted before she could hit send. Mill Creek, 10 miles north of town. I grabbed my keys, shoved the printout of the email into my pocket, and headed for the door. If Collins had been there once, maybe he still was. And if he wasn't, there'd be something. Tracks, evidence, anything that could tell me what really happened. The drive was dark and quiet, the desert stretching endlessly. When I finally turned onto the dirt path that led toward the creek, I killed the engine and listened. Crickets, wind, and somewhere distant, a faint metallic clatter. Flashlight in hand, I took a breath and started walking. The closer I got to Mill Creek, the colder the air felt. The road turned to mud. I parked beneath a cluster of pines and killed the engine. The place was too quiet for a meeting spot. Just the wind and the soft rush of water. The cabin wasn't hard to find. A small wooden structure with peeling paint. A sagging porch. The front door was locked, but the lock was new, shiny, cheap. I went around back, found a cracked window, and slipped inside. The smell hit first, mold, stale smoke, and something chemical. Bleach. Inside, it looked abandoned. One table, 2 chairs, a metal filing cabinet, an ashtray full of cigarette butts. On the table, a single mug, half full of coffee, still warm. Someone had been here. I froze, listening. Just the soft drip of a leaky pipe. I took a step closer to the table and saw a few damp, curled sheets of paper beside the mug. The top page was a printout of a bank transfer, Colin's home improvement, to an account under a fake name. The same offshore account Lana had documented. Another page was handwritten, the same messy scrawl from her planner. I held it to the light. If you ever find this place, it means he knows. I didn't have time to finish what I started. The files, the ledger, everything he used to hide money there. Here. Please don't come after him. Take Connor and leave. I know you won't, but I have to say it anyway. My throat tightened. Even in a note meant for the worst-case scenario, she'd known exactly how I'd react. I know you won't. She was right. The floor creaked behind me. I spun around. A man stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the fading light. Tall, heavy-set, hands raised slightly. 40, maybe 50, wearing a grease-stained work jacket. His face was rough, his chin marked with a thin white scar. "Lieutenant Pierce," he said calmly. "You shouldn't be here." "Collins," I said, my voice flat. "You've got a lot of nerve showing up." He smirked. "Funny, I could say the same. Breaking into private property, going through my stuff. Not exactly by the book for a soldier, is it?" "This isn't about rules," I said. "It's about what you did to my sister." He took a slow, deliberate step forward. "Your sister made a mistake. She got involved in something she didn't understand. I tried to help her, told her to walk away. She didn't listen." "You mean she didn't pay you fast enough?" I clenched my fists. His eyes hardened. "She stole from me. She took the files. Do you have any idea what that put me in? The people I work with don't like mistakes." She panicked. "And now look where we are. So you killed her." He shook his head, almost casually. "If I wanted her dead, you'd have found a body by now." The way he said it made my skin crawl. Not if she's dead, but if I wanted her dead. Intentional. Precise. I took a step closer. "Where is she?" Collins tilted his head, that smug smile never fading. "You're asking the wrong questions. You should be asking yourself why she didn't tell you anything. Maybe she knew what you'd do." He turned to leave, but I moved faster. I grabbed him by the collar, slammed him against the door frame. "Where is she?" His hand shot up, gripping my wrist hard enough to bruise. "Your first mistake." For a moment, we stood locked in that standoff, the kind that could go bad fast. Then, headlights flashed outside. Collins shoved me back, straightened his jacket, and walked out. I followed. A dark sedan. 2 men stepped out, Vargo and Carver, the same ones from the storage unit. Collins waved them off. "It's fine. She's leaving." "Like hell I am," I said. Merritt's voice cut through the night from behind me. "Actually, yes, you are." He stepped into view, flashlight in hand, 2 uniformed officers behind him. Collins froze, his smirk fading. "Merritt," I said, not taking my eyes off Collins. "You're late." "Story of my life," he replied. "Collins, you're under arrest for obstruction, extortion, and suspicion of kidnapping." Hands where I can see them. Collins looked annoyed more than scared. "You got no proof of anything." "Oh, we've got plenty," Merritt said. "Between the ledger, the offshore accounts, and your text threatening a single mother, I'd say you're not walking out of here tonight." Vargo took a step forward, but the younger officer raised his weapon. "Don't." The air hung heavy. Then Collins smiled again, slow, deliberate. You boys think you've got this under control, he said. But you have no idea who you're actually dealing with. Merritt cuffed him without a word. As they led him to the car, Collins turned his head and looked at me. You think she was innocent, he said quietly. You didn't know your sister like I did. The words stuck to me like oil. I wanted to ask what he meant, but Merritt nudged me toward his car. Let it go, he said. We'll get more out of him at the station. Back at headquarters, Collins sat in an interrogation room, smug and silent. Through the glass, I watched Merritt question him. He didn't deny the money or the threats. He just kept circling back to the same phrase, she wasn't who you think she was. Merritt came out an hour later, rubbing the back of his neck. He's not talking about her disappearance. Keeps saying she ran, like she took something and left. I frowned. He's lying. Maybe, Merritt said, but maybe not entirely. We ran her bank logs. She made a transfer 2 days before she vanished, $10,000 to an account under the name W. Palmer. We're still tracing it. W. Palmer? I repeated. Never heard of him. Maybe someone helping her, he said. Maybe someone helping him. Either way, she didn't tell you everything. He looked at me carefully. You sure you want to keep digging, Lieutenant? Sometimes the truth isn't the comfort you think it'll be. I stared through the glass at Collins, still sitting there like he owned the place, smirk fixed. Yeah, I said. I'm sure. When I got home that night, I sat in Lana's old room. The photo of her and Connor was still on the dresser, taped back together. I stared at it, then pulled Lana's note from Mill Creek out of my pocket again. Please don't come after him. She knew exactly who he was. But she had also left me everything I needed to finish what she started. And I wasn't about to stop halfway. The next morning, the station smelled of burnt coffee and frustration. Merritt was pacing, barking orders. Collins had been transferred to county lockup, but his smug expression hadn't faded. The bastard's lawyer is already filing motions, Merritt muttered. He's got friends with deep pockets. Of course he does, I said. People like him don't do business alone. One more thing, Merritt said. We pulled GPS data from your sister's car. Last signal from a wooded area past Mill Creek. Private land, owned by one of Collins's shell companies. So, we're going there. We're going there, he confirmed. But you're riding with me this time. I didn't argue. The drive took less than an hour, the last few miles on narrow, dirt roads lined with pines. No cell reception, just the hum of tires over gravel. The kind of place where sound didn't travel and secrets didn't echo. The car stopped in a clearing. Ahead, through the trees, a narrow cabin, smaller than the one at Mill Creek, almost camouflaged. No signs of life, but the air had that heavy stillness that told you something had happened. Merritt stepped out, flashlight ready. Stay close. Wasn't planning a picnic. The front door was shut, but not locked. Inside, the smell was faint but distinct, decay mixed with bleach. A contradiction that turned my stomach. The living room was empty except for an armchair and cardboard boxes. Dust covered everything except the floor, where someone had recently walked. Fresh prints, Merritt muttered, crouching. Small boot size? Maybe a woman's. My chest tightened. You think it's hers? Could be, he said. Or someone who wanted us to think that. He moved toward the back room. I checked the boxes. Old receipts, junk, and a few photographs. Most were construction sites. But one photo made my blood run cold. Lana, standing next to a truck, smiling, though it looked forced. Behind her, barely visible, was Collins. I turned it over. On the back, in her handwriting, March 12th, the day before she disappeared. "Detective," I called. Merritt came over, looked at the picture. She was here. That confirms it. The back room looked like it had been cleared in a hurry. Empty shelves, torn papers, a broken phone. Merritt lifted the mattress from a small cot and found a faint, dark stain on the wood beneath. "We'll test it. Could be blood." I stared at it. Something in me slipped. Not panic, but that creeping hum that starts at the back of your skull and spreads until it takes over your breathing. I'd felt it in combat. The mind fracturing between focus and fear. The room tilted slightly. Merritt's voice sounded distant. "You okay?" "Yeah, I lied. Just give me a second." I stepped outside, bracing against the cool air, focusing on the wind. A soft sound broke the rhythm. The faint crunch of leaves behind the cabin. I scanned the tree line. A shadow moved between the trees. Smaller than an adult, quick, watching. "Detective," I called quietly. "We've got company." Merritt was beside me in seconds, hand on his weapon. The shadow darted away. "Connor," I breathed. Merritt shot me a look. "The kid's in protective custody." I stepped forward anyway. Slowly, the figure darted away deeper into the trees. Merritt swore. "Damn it. Stay here." Like hell. We followed, careful, silent. The path curved down toward the creek where the trees thinned. The figure was gone. But by the water, something caught the light. A small silver chain. A compass charm. I crouched, picking it up. It wasn't mine. The design was newer, thinner. Merritt looked around. "Could be Lana's," he said quietly. "Or someone who wanted to make it look that way." My voice came out tight. "She wore one like this when we were kids. Said it meant she'd always find her way back." He exhaled slowly. "Maybe she still will." We walked further along the bank. 2 sets of footprints, one smaller than the other, both leading toward the water, then disappearing. Merritt crouched. Adult female and someone else. Size 8, maybe 9. Recent. Within 48 hours. He glanced at me. "If she's alive, she's been moving around here." I nodded, but part of me wasn't convinced. We followed the creek until we found an old fire pit, beer cans, a tarp. Someone had been camping here. I pulled out a folded flannel shirt from under the tarp and froze. It was Lana's. I recognized the faded blue and gray pattern, the frayed cuffs, the missing button. Merritt took it gently, slipped it into an evidence bag. "We'll run DNA," he said. "But I think you already know." I nodded, unable to speak. Back at the cabin, the tech team was arriving. Merritt started directing them. I stayed by the Jeep, staring at the tree line. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Somewhere distant, a crow called, sharp and lonely. The hum in my head hadn't faded. I pressed my palms against the hood of the car, grounding myself. "That stain. The bleach." Her voice. "Please don't come after him." When Merritt came back out, he handed me a small plastic bag. Inside, a torn piece of notebook paper wedged behind the filing cabinet. Lana's handwriting. Only 3 words. "Trust the river." I turned it over in my hands. The meaning sank in. The creek had always been her escape as kids. "Trust the river," I repeated quietly. Merritt gave me a long look, but didn't argue. If she left that for you, we'll find what she wanted us to see. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flannel shirt, the stain, that note. Trust the river. The words looped in my head like a mission order I hadn't completed. I spread maps across the kitchen table, tracing the creek north into the state forest. By sunrise, I was on the road again. I didn't tell Merritt. He'd try to stop me. This wasn't about protocol. This was personal. The forest was thick, green and gold and endless. The dirt trail narrowed. I parked and continued on foot, boots crunching through fallen branches. The river grew louder with every step. Half a mile in, I found an old campsite, fire pit cold but recent. Empty food cans, a torn tarp, muddy footprints leading down to the riverbank. 2 sets again. Then, a metallic click behind me. Hands where I can see them. The voice was male, deep calm. I turned slowly. It was Collins. He looked rougher, unshaven, bloodshot eyes, jacket streaked with dirt. He wasn't supposed to be out of jail. But there he was, 10 feet away, a revolver pointed at my chest. "You've got a hell of a habit of showing up where you shouldn't," he said. "You're supposed to be in custody," I replied, keeping my voice steady. He grinned. "Money buys fast lawyers and friends. Merritt's a good cop, but even he can't keep a lock closed when the key belongs to someone else." I took a step forward. "You killed her, didn't you?" He tilted his head. "Killed? No. She was alive the last time I saw her." "Scared?" "Sure." Crying, begging me to make it stop. But breathing. My jaw tightened. "Where is she now?" He shrugged. "You really want to know? Or do you want someone to blame? Because those aren't the same thing." I moved closer. "You don't get to talk like you're the victim here." His smirk vanished. "You think I wanted this? Your sister poked around where she didn't belong. She was smart, too. Smart for her own good. She thought she could expose people who've been in this game for decades. She was trying to protect her son." "Yeah," he said. "And now look where that got her." That was it. Something in me broke. Before I knew it, I was on him. The gun went off once, the bullet tearing through a tree behind me. I tackled him hard, the weapon skidding across the dirt. We hit the ground in a tangle of limbs and adrenaline. He swung first, wild, angry. I blocked, countered, drove my knee into his ribs. He gasped, tried to grab for the gun, but I kicked it out of reach. He spat blood and glared up at me. "Go ahead, soldier. Do what you came to do. That's what you people are good at, right? Cleaning up messes." For a second, I almost did. My hand hovered near the gun. He wanted me to cross that line, to become the same kind of monster he was. But the training that had built me, the discipline that had kept me alive, pulled me back. I grabbed his wrist, twisted hard until he cried out, and yanked his hands behind his back with a zip tie from my pocket. "You don't get to decide how this ends," I said quietly. When Merritt arrived, because yes, I'd finally called him, he didn't even look surprised. He just stared at Collins, cuffed and bruised, and then at me. "Couldn't wait, huh?" "Didn't trust waiting," I said. He sighed. "Fair enough." We drove Collins back to the station, silence heavy in the car. Merritt's jaw worked. Finally, he muttered, "He's not the type to act alone. If he's talking about people in this game, that means a network. And that means your sister got caught in something bigger than this town." "She mentioned offshore accounts," I said. "Maybe she found proof of who those people are." "Maybe," Merritt said. But she also mentioned the river. Trust the river. She was leaving us a trail, I said. He nodded slowly. If that's true, she might have hidden something out there. Evidence. A drive. Something she couldn't keep in the house. We locked Collins in holding under tighter supervision this time. He didn't say a word during booking, just stared at me with that same unnerving calm. As Merritt filled out paperwork, I stood outside the room, watching. Collins looked up and smiled, just slightly. You think this ends with me? He said through the intercom. You really don't know what you're walking into. I know exactly what I'm walking into, I said. You're just the first stop. He laughed, low and mean. You sound just like her. I won. The words hit harder than they should have. I left before I could give him the satisfaction of seeing it. Outside, the afternoon light was fading. Merritt joined me a few minutes later. We found something in Collins's truck. A second burner phone. One text from an unknown contact, time-stamped the night Lana disappeared. He showed me the message, unknown, package handled. Riverside cleaned. No trace. Collins, good. She had the drive. Make sure it's gone. I stared at the screen. Package. You think that means her? Merritt frowned. Could mean the evidence. Could mean both. The pit in my stomach deepened. Cleaned. If they said cleaned, that means they went back. Maybe that's why we didn't find anything. He nodded. Maybe. But there's still one thing left to check. Downstream from where we found her note. If she hid something by the river, that's where it would end up. The wind picked up, brushing through the dry brush like static. I felt that same hum building under my ribs. Not panic this time, but drive. Merritt saw it. Don't do anything stupid, he said quietly. Depends on your definition, I said. He gave a half smile. I'm starting to think we don't share the same one. I got into the Jeep. The engine rumbled. The radio kicked on automatically, an old country song Lana used to play. I didn't bother turning it off. As the tires hit the dirt road again, I followed the river, watching it glint between the trees like a trail of moving silver. Trust the river. It sounded less like a clue now and more like a dare. The kind my sister would have made, smiling just enough to drive me crazy, knowing I wouldn't be able to let it go. And she was right. I couldn't. The river curved through the valley, shallow enough to wade, strong enough to carry anything downstream. I parked near an old bridge and followed the sound of water until the forest swallowed the rest of the world. The sky was low and gray, the kind that made everything hold its breath. I followed the current for maybe a mile before I saw it, half buried under a fallen log, a plastic container, cracked and filled with mud. I knelt, brushed away the dirt, and pried it open. Inside were two things, a waterproof USB drive and a single Polaroid photograph. The photo was of Lana, standing in front of her house, holding Connor, smiling that nervous smile she always had when something was wrong but she didn't want to admit it. On the back, she'd written, "If I don't make it back, this is my truth." My stomach twisted. The flash drive was cold in my palm, heavier than it should have been. I didn't even wait to get back to town. I plugged it into my laptop right there on the hood of the Jeep, the river humming beside me. The drive opened into a single folder, evidence. Inside were videos, audio recordings, scanned contracts, and a series of emails, all connecting Collins and his business to a front company registered under W. Palmer. The money trail stretched farther than I expected. shell corporations, fake property sales, overseas accounts. It wasn't just Collins, it was half the town. One video file was labeled Meeting 3. I clicked it. Grainy footage from a hidden camera. Lana's voice came first, low and tense. I'm done with this, Reed. I can't keep lying to my clients. Collins's voice replied, casual and cold. You don't get to be done. You're in this now. You sign off the books or that little boy of yours has an accident. She gasped. You wouldn't. I would, he said. And if you go to the cops, I'll make sure you're the one they find guilty. You've got enough signatures on those papers to bury yourself. The sound of something breaking, a chair, maybe, filled the audio, followed by her shouting. Then the video cut off. I stared at the screen, every muscle in my body tight. It wasn't just a threat. It was proof of intent. Proof that she hadn't been reckless or naive. She'd been trapped. And she'd fought back the only way she could, by collecting evidence. I called Merritt. His tone went from tired to focused in a heartbeat. Don't move, he said. I'm sending a unit. By the time he arrived, rain had started to fall. Soft at first, then heavy. We watched the river together as the tech team copied the files. Merritt's jaw was tight. This isn't just local crime. These transfers go through 3 states. Someone higher up gave the orders. So Collins wasn't lying when he said he wasn't the only one, I said. He nodded. We can get him to talk. With this, he doesn't have a way out. We drove straight to the station. Collins was waiting in the interrogation room again, but the smirk was gone. When Merritt dropped the flash drive on the table, he didn't even reach for it. He just leaned back, studying us. So, you found it, he said finally. You recorded yourself threatening a woman and her child, Merritt said. That's not just stupidity. That's a confession. Collins's lips twitched. You think I care about prison? You don't get it. The people who run this, they don't leave witnesses. I wasn't protecting myself. I was protecting everyone else from them by killing her, I snapped. He shook his head. I didn't kill her. Merritt crossed his arms. Then where is she? Collins looked at me. You really want to know? I met his eyes. Say it. She's dead, he said, voice flat. But it wasn't me. She tried to run with the evidence. They found out. I buried her because I didn't want them to leave her out there like trash. For a moment, everything inside me went silent. The air left my lungs. My brain slowed down and the world blurred. Where? I finally managed. He didn't fight. Old drainage site. North side of the freight yard. You'll find what's left. Merritt signaled the officers outside. Collins didn't resist. He just looked back at me once, eyes hollow. You can't win against ghosts, Lieutenant. They're already part of the system. I followed Merritt out of the room, every step heavier than the last. We didn't speak on the way to the site. The rain had turned to a steady downpour, turning everything to gray. When we reached the old freight yard, the smell hit first, damp earth, rust, decay. The site was fenced off, a wide ditch running behind the loading docks. The forensics team moved quietly. It didn't take long. They found her, wrapped in a tarp, under 2 feet of soil near the drainage pipe. The flannel shirt was still around her shoulders. Merritt stood beside me while they worked, saying nothing. He didn't have to. I stared at the spot numb. The rain blurred everything. Or maybe that was just my eyes. I wanted to scream, to tear something apart, but the noise wouldn't come. I'd seen bodies before, soldiers, civilians. But this was different. This was family. When they lifted her out, I noticed something on her wrist. A silver bracelet, the one I'd given her years ago when she graduated college. It had a single engraving on the inside, "To find your way home." The words barely cut through the sound of the rain. Back at the station, Merritt took my statement. It was formality. Everyone knew. The DA filed for an immediate murder charge. I sat in the observation room, staring at the evidence board. Collins's photo, dead center, his mug shot glaring. Around it, all the threads, money, documents, names. It was supposed to feel like closure. It didn't. It felt like staring at a wound that had stopped bleeding but hadn't healed. Autopsy will confirm it, Merritt said, coffee in hand. But we've got everything we need. Collins won't walk out again. And that doesn't change anything, I said quietly. No, he admitted. But it means she gets justice. I gave a dry laugh. Justice? That's a word people like to use when they can't undo something. He didn't argue. You know, I've been doing this 20 years. Most families never get answers. You did. That matters. I looked up at him. She died scared and alone, Merritt. Answers don't fix that. He took a sip of coffee. No, but they stopped the same people from doing it again. And that's something. When I finally stood, I looked at the board one last time. It was supposed to feel like victory. It felt like a deep, echoing loss. I left the building just as the clouds broke, a thin line of sunlight cutting through the gray. The air smelled of wet asphalt and burnt coffee. Connor was waiting at the hospital, staying with a social worker. When I walked in, he looked up, his eyes searching my face. "Did you find Mom?" he asked. I nodded once. "Yeah, kiddo." I did. He stared at me for a long time, then whispered, "Is she coming back?" I wanted to lie, but he deserved better. "No, but she's safe now." He nodded slowly, like he understood more than a child should. Then he leaned into me, small arms wrapping around my neck, and I finally let myself cry quietly into his shoulder, where he couldn't see my face. The world outside kept moving, but for once, none of it mattered. All I could hear was the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Small but strong, like the river still moving somewhere out there. And for the first time since it all started, I didn't feel the need to fight it. The courtroom smelled like old wood and tension. Collins sat at the defense table, his quiet smirk still there, believing he'd win. I sat behind the prosecutor unofficially. Connor was too young to be here. The judge entered. The bailiff called for order. Months of investigation collapsed into this single moment. I'd been to war zones quieter than that courtroom. The prosecutors started strong. The evidence was airtight. But defense lawyers are magicians. They twisted reality until guilt looked like self-preservation. Mr. Collins, his attorney said, was a victim of a larger machine. He cooperated with the state. He did not kill Lana Mercer. He buried her, yes, but out of fear, not malice. The jury shifted uncomfortably. Fear. The word hung in the air, supposed to excuse everything. Merritt leaned toward me. "They're playing the sympathy card. They'll lose it," I muttered. Fear doesn't justify a shallow grave. When it was the prosecution's turn again, they showed the footage from the drive. The courtroom went silent as Lana's voice filled the room. Her pleading. His threats. The sound of her crying out before the feed cut off. The jurors looked sick. That is not fear. The prosecutor pointed at Collins. That is control. That is a man who saw a woman trying to escape and made sure she didn't. For once, Collins looked small. The trial lasted 6 days. 6 days of reliving everything. By the time closing arguments came, I felt hollowed out. The prosecutor stood, her voice calm but steady. You'll hear the defense say Reed Collins didn't mean for this to happen. But every criminal starts with an excuse. Every coward hides behind someone worse. What matters is choice. He made his. Now it's time for you to make yours. The jury left. 2 hours later, they came back. The foreman stood, voice low and certain. On the charge of murder in the 2nd degree, we find the defendant guilty. I exhaled for the first time in days. The room erupted. Collins didn't move. His eyes flicked toward me, and in that half-second, I saw disappointment. Not regret. Just the realization that his luck had run out. The judge handed down the sentence, life without parole. When the gavel came down, it didn't sound like victory. It sounded like the closing of a door that should have been shut years ago. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted my name. I just kept walking until the noise faded. Merritt caught up. You did it, he said quietly. No, I said. She did. She left the evidence. I just followed it. He smiled faintly. You could have taken his head off that day by the river. You didn't. That counts for something. Maybe, I said, but it doesn't feel like it. He hesitated. You're not done. You know, people like Collins don't operate alone. The feds are going to keep digging. I nodded. Then let them dig. I'm done with graves. I drove to the cemetery. The grass was still damp. Lana's grave was simple. Her name, dates, and a line I'd chosen. She fought for truth, even when it cost her everything. I stood there for a long time. Merritt had followed, staying a few paces back. The DA's office wants to issue a statement, he said. Public closure, that kind of thing. Closure is overrated, I said. It's just what people say when they want you to stop talking about the dead. He looked at the grave. Maybe, but sometimes it's all we get. She wanted to protect her kid, I said. That's all. Merritt shoved his hands in his pockets. You know, when I first met you, I thought you were dangerous. I gave a dry laugh. You weren't wrong. No, he said, smiling. But not in the way I thought. The wind shifted, carrying the sound of the nearby river. It sounded softer now, less like a warning, more like an echo of something she'd left behind. I touched the cold stone. You got him, Lana. It's over. Merritt spoke again. There's talk of commendations. Recommending you for civilian assistance. I shook my head. I don't need a medal, just a little quiet. He chuckled. Can't promise quiet, but maybe peace. Same difference, I said. We left as the sun dipped, streaking the sky orange and gray. Merritt headed to his car. I lingered by the gate. For a brief second, I thought I saw movement near the trees. A kid, holding something small and silver that caught the light, then disappeared. Probably just my eyes playing tricks. But it made me smile anyway. On the drive home, I rolled the windows down, letting the cool air hit my face. The courthouse, the graveyard, the flashing cameras, they all faded. What stayed was the sound of the river, steady and unbroken. Justice had come, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. And sometimes, that's enough. A month after the trial, my apartment finally felt like a home. Connor was asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket he'd claimed. He was getting used to Las Vegas. I sat by the window, watching headlights crawl down the strip. For the first time in years, I wasn't counting down to deployment. I'd filed my leave papers, indefinite. After 20 years, I needed a different kind of fight. Connor stirred, mumbling. He'd stopped having nightmares every night, but some still got through. When they did, he called for his mom before remembering she wasn't there. Those moments hurt more than anything war had thrown at me. There's no training for explaining death to a child who still believes love can undo it. During the day, we built routines. School, ice cream, the park. He'd started to laugh again. The kid was resilient. He had his mother's stubborn streak. Merritt called sometimes, giving updates on the wider investigation. The feds had taken over. Collins was serving life. You ever think about testifying in the federal case? Merritt asked one evening. I've given them everything I had, I said. The rest isn't my war. He chuckled. You always say that, but you don't really believe it. Maybe not, I admitted. But for now, I'm trying to. When I hung up, Connor stood in the hallway, holding a drawing. A stick figure family. Me, him, and a woman with long brown hair. That's Mom, he said, pointing. She's watching us from the sky. I swallowed the lump in my throat and smiled. She'd like that. Do you think she'd be proud of me? She already is, I said. And she's probably yelling at me for letting you eat ice cream for dinner again. He laughed. A real one. It filled the room like sunlight. Later that week, I started therapy again. The VA had a good program. I told the doctor about the war, about Lana, about Collins. I told him I'd spent half my life learning how to fight and the other half pretending that fighting made sense. He nodded. Soldiers and survivors have the same problem. We both get used to surviving more than living. That stuck with me. At night, I still had moments. Flashes of her voice. Trust the river. Sometimes I'd wake up and hear running water. But it wasn't haunting anymore. It was grounding, like she was reminding me that life doesn't stop moving. One afternoon, I took Connor to a veterans event. As the color guard passed, Connor saluted, his tiny hand pressed to his forehead with absolute seriousness. He yours? A man asked. My sister's boy, I said. He nodded. You raising him? That's more service than most of us ever do. He patted my shoulder. He was right. That night, I dug through her old things. Police had returned them. Photos, a locket, her wedding ring, the compass charm. The compass charm wasn't broken, just bent slightly. Somehow, that felt fitting. There was also her old journal. Near the back, one page remained, faint but legible. If anything happens to me, tell Connor to live bravely. Tell him his mom wasn't perfect, but she tried. And tell my sister to stop carrying everyone else's battles. She's earned her peace. I just sat there, reading it over and over, letting the words dig in. In the morning, I took Connor hiking outside the city. We found a small stream. He skipped stones. This looks like the river you talked about, he said. It's not the same one, I said, smiling. But it moves the same way. He laughed. Mom would like it here. She would, I said softly. For the first time, the ache in my chest didn't feel like grief. It felt like gratitude. On the drive back, Connor fell asleep. The radio played an old song Lana used to sing along to. I joined in quietly at first, then louder, until the lyrics turned into something like a promise. When we got home, the evening lights spilled across the living room. I set the compass charm on the table next to Lana and Connor's photo. The city outside buzzed with life. I didn't need to chase anymore. For the first time in years, I felt still. The year slipped by. Connor grew taller, his laugh louder. I'd learned to live with glitter. Merritt still called sometimes. Justice always shows up late to the party, he'd say. Better late than never, I told him. Yeah, he said. But it never brings what you asked for. He was right. Justice doesn't fill the holes. It just gives you the tools to build around them. On the anniversary of Lana's death, Connor and I drove back to Reno. The old grocery store was boarded up, faded. We parked anyway. I stood there, tracing the memories. Connor tugged my sleeve. Can we go see her? Yeah, I said. Let's go. The cemetery was quiet. Just us. I knelt and placed lilies on the headstone. Connor added a drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands. She'd like that, I said. He nodded. I miss her. I know. She was brave, right? He asked. The bravest person I ever knew, I said. She didn't back down, even when she was scared. Do you think I'll be like her? You already are, I smiled. You just don't know it yet. Before leaving, I slipped the compass charm under the flowers. It had belonged to her. Now it belonged there. Back in Vegas, things settled into rhythm. Life didn't erase the pain, but it made space for it. One Friday night, I found an essay in Connor's binder. The person I look up to. The first line read, "My aunt says, revenge doesn't make you strong. It just makes you tired. She says, real strength is protecting people, not hurting them." I read it twice. It wasn't pride I felt. It was relief. Proof that the boy who'd once hidden in a closet had found his voice. A few weeks later, Merritt came by. He'd been promoted. More paperwork, fewer car chases, he grinned. We sat on the balcony, watching the city pulse. You ever think about going back? He asked. To the army? He nodded. Every day, I said. And every day I remind myself I already did my time. I'm needed here now. He smiled. Yeah, I figured you'd say that. We talked for a while. Then he looked out at the skyline. You know, you could have taken revenge. No one would have blamed you, but you didn't. Why? I took a sip. Because revenge doesn't fix anything. It just keeps you in the same place, waiting for the next hit. My sister deserved better than that. Connor deserved better than that. He nodded slowly. You really believe that? I have to, I said. Otherwise, what was all of this for? We sat there until the city lights blurred into one endless glow. When he left, the apartment felt still, but not empty. Just peaceful. Later that night, I found Connor awake. Can't sleep? I asked. He shook his head. I was thinking about Mom. I sat beside him. She used to tell me, he said softly, that rivers don't stop. Even when they hit rocks, they just find a way around. You think that's true? It is, I said. And you're part of that river now. So am I. He leaned against me. I'm glad you came to find me that day. I smiled. Yeah, me too. When he finally fell asleep, I carried him to bed. He was safe. He was home. That was enough. I walked back to the balcony. Somewhere out there, The river kept flowing, maybe slower, maybe softer, but always forward. And in that stillness, I realized revenge had never been the real story. It was about love, flawed, painful, relentless love, the kind that survives even after everything else falls apart. I promised Lana once I'd protect what mattered most. I finally understood what that meant. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about continuation, about turning pain into purpose and keeping the promise to move forward. No matter how deep the current ran, the night was quiet, the city alive, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a soldier anymore. I felt like a sister who had finally come home.